Hey guys, Scott here, and today I want to do one of my favorite things, which is call people out for being hypocrites. Now, this video is about listening to data and just basing your opinions just solely off of data. This is something that we give the devs quite a bit of shit for, right? You know, they look at data, they just throw shit at a wall until things have to 50% win rate. That's sort of how they balance things. They don't look at the why, they just look at the data most of the time. Obviously, they don't do it all the time where they'd be buffing Nurse because Nurse has like the lowest earn rate, but we know why Nurse has the lowest earn rate. She's the hardest, to get into to learn. So we give the devs shit for this, but this video is actually not about the devs. This video is about the community who do the exact same thing that the devs do while giving shit to the devs for doing it. And I will go over some notable examples. There are giant playlists of survivors doing all the gens in 3 minutes. DPIP Squad, I think, is the perfect example. For those who don't know, the DPIP Squad was a group of survivors that basically played as sweaty as and efficiently as possible. And they did 100 games. And of course, they won most of their games because, everyone knows that at the very, very highest level, unless you're Nurse or Spirit, survivors are favored at the tippy top. Thing is, though, everyone already knew this. The devs already knew it. Everyone already knew that. So I'm not sure what that whole experiment was setting out to prove because everyone knows that at the highest level, survivors are a bit stronger. That's just how the game is. And it doesn't really matter because that's, it's just like a 1 out of 200 experience that you go against that. Just like in the flip side, it's a 1 out of 200 experience that you go against, that god tier Nurse that cannot be stopped in any way. You're not going to go against that very much, and you're not going to go against, the DPIP Squad very much. But I want to bring them up as examples for this because they're the ones that are commonly cited. And what I mean by that is when people are using arguments for how strong survivors, they'll bring up DPIP Squad, which is, you're just looking at big data again. You're just doing the same thing the devs are. You're not watching all 100 games that they did individually and seeing exactly why this killer lost, why this killer lost. You're not doing that. You're just seeing, oh, look, playlist 100 games, survivors won 90% of their games, therefore survivor OP. You're just using big data just like the devs are. You're doing the exact same shit that you're giving them, shit for. But there's a double hypocrisy here too, because people that do this will also only listen to the data that benefits their argument and they'll just ignore the other data. And I can prove this 100%. So people will reference the DPIP Squad as, look how OP Survivor is. Look how much they're destroying the survivors. This is proof of it. And then on the flip side, they will ignore, for example, I think Otts did a 54K game or streak with Clown, right? They will ignore that though. But technically, if they use their own logic, they're looking at, 100 games here and 50 games here. If survivors won every game here and you draw the conclusion that survivors are OP and the killer won 50 games here and you don't draw the conclusion that killer is OP, your logic is inconsistent and you're just using it when it benefits you. So already you can prove that that is hypocrisy because you're only listening to data when it supports you. And, example of that, you look at the DPIP Squad and you say, okay, well, yeah, the survivors are OP. And then you just sort of ignore when Otts gets 54Ks in a row with Clown, or I get 54Ks, or I, do speed limiter streaks or something like that. You just throw out our data because it doesn't suit what you're trying to say. And you're basically assuming, with your own logic, that everyone the DPIP Squad went against was a top tier 1% killer that we should be balancing the game off of, which of course they were not. Just like every, team that I or Otts or anyone that does these streaks goes against, they're not all top 1% people. Of course not. In either case, if they only went against top 1% killers and we only went against top 1% survivors, no shit, the data would be very, very different. They would start losing a shit ton of their games. We would start losing a shit ton of our games. Of course, that's just how it works. But for some reason, they just sort of ignore whatever side doesn't benefit their argument. And I just had to bring that up as it's just the most hypocritical shit ever. You have to follow your own logic. You're ignoring the fact that not every game is like that, only when it benefits you. And I don't know, I just think that's a shitty opinion to have. And I really wish people would stop using these videos as proof of anything. I assure you, as someone who has done speed limiter Leatherface streaks before he was even buffed, my data is meaningless. I'm telling you, that data does not mean anything. I'm sure Otts will tell you the exact same thing. It does not mean anything. It's just a personal challenge we set for ourselves to entertain our viewers and to prove that we're better than average. And that's about it. That's all we're trying to do with those videos. So I think people need to stop taking those videos and they need to stop taking videos where survivors do all the gens in 3 minutes as evidence for a normal game. That's just, in both scenarios, that's probably just not happening. And if you think it is, I have to imagine it's it's confirmation bias or something like that. All of your gens are not getting done in 3 minutes every game. It's just not happening. If you're saying that's happening, either you're just AFK, you're completely horrible, or you're just lying. Those are the only possible scenarios. It might happen, every couple of games, but it's still not indicative of your average game. And I think that is something that people really need to pay attention to. These outliers, these streaks, these DPIF squads, they are not the normal experience of the game. They are meaningless data. They're just experiments that should be taken as fun, and that's about it. So stop using them as building blocks for your argument, because they are just as meaningless as the random data that the devs are using to just make weird changes. You're doing the exact same shit that they are. So knock that shit off.